Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Dwayne today. I need to give a little bit of background first before we get into this. So if you've heard my interview with Ronnie Roseman, which was about a year or so ago now, and it's an episode that's gotten pretty popular where, I'm not leaving, even if they tear me apart in the Oakridge, Oregon area. And in that story that Ronnie shares, there was the individual Dwayne. Now, what happened is Dwayne actually reached out to me the other day, and he's okay with discussing what happened along the years from his point of view. So this is an interview that I never thought would happen, but I'm so incredibly excited that it is happening. So Dwayne, how are you doing today, sir?
Good, thank you very much. And yourself?
Oh, I'm having a great day. I'm looking forward to coming out to Oregon in about a month, a little over a month, and having a good time out there for the Sasquatch Summerfest. Dwayne, let's get right into it. So I'm going to ask you right off the bat, being from that area, what was the first thing that you remember hearing about Bigfoot when you're in that area?
Oh, every once in a while somebody would say something about it, but usually it was pretty quiet. People didn't want to admit to nothing or anything like that. But, over the years of just being in the woods itself, you hear these noises and you can't really explain it. I mean, you try to write it off, but, just more and more builds up over time, and it's until something, amazing and terrifying happens that, it's crazy. But, it's like we go out camping and or hunting, me and my dad, my brother, and we're always in the woods. I started getting into the high lakes, like when I was 1. My dad he made me a special life vest, and he'd pack me up there with his rubber raft up into these lakes above Oakridge that you got to walk between 30 and 7 miles to get to. So I've always been in the woods. But it probably started up there with, we'd hear knocking. And we're 7 miles up in the woods. And then all of a sudden you get knocking and noises and can't write it off. You don't know what it is, but it's just weird. It builds up. And one time we went into Devil's Lake. You got to hike up over a hump and then down into a bowl to get in there. And we went in there, caught some brook trout all day long, picked salmon berries to bring home, and we were coming out of there. My friend, he had a bear tag, and he sees this black hair. It's kind of skimming through the brush really fast. So he bails out the truck and starts pursuing. And this thing is moving unbelievably fast. But it gets to the end of this thing of trees. So there's kind of a clearing and a little ledge there. And the thing just kind of raises up and one hands it like you're hopping a fence and ran off on 2 legs. I'm like, I can't go after that bear. It just didn't look right. But, it still wasn't too terrifying. And then once I gave a friend a dog, and it was up on Tire Mountain. He was going the back road home, and he got a flat tire up there, and the dog got out, and it wouldn't come to him. So I had to go up there to get it, me and my wife. And we're, tapping on the hood of the car and hollering for him. And all of a sudden, this roaring starts really loud. And she was getting nervous. I was getting nervous because, it just kept getting closer and closer and closer. And next thing you know, I got this little Jack Russell, they bark at everything. I mean, everything. It was under the seat, crying and shaking, and my wife was screaming, get in the car now, and this thing was just coming up over the ridge. And so she sped off down this dirt road, round the corner, down and around another corner, and pulls over because she can't contain herself too well. And then she says, I don't feel safe. I don't feel safe. And she was crying the whole time. So she took off again. She cried all night at home. And then went up in the next morning, me and my nephew and her, to go try to find the dog. We found the dog. But right where we pulled over, the tracks had come down the hill from the top where we were, and it was like 18 inches long or so. I'd say 7 to 9 inches wide at the heel. I mean, just massive track. And she stopped going in the woods with me. So no more really running around the woods. And so I went up here camping above Oakridge, where I always go as a kid. And I'm up there by myself, and I'm camping. And then my dad comes up, and then my son, he wants to go hunting. So he comes up, and he, breaks out the guitar. He's singing. He writes songs. He's incredible. And we're having a good time, and we hear these noises. I'm like, do you hear that? It's like monkey sounds, kind of. And my son's friend, he says, no, that's an owl. He said, that's an owl. I said, no, not that. Not the owl. Listen. And then they heard that. And the next morning, they went down into the swamps, and they were hunting down to the edge of the water looking for deer or elk or whatever they were going after. And they come across the Bigfoot track down there. And then, so my son, they left the hunting trip. His friend didn't want to do that. And he went and got some plaster of Paris. But we're in Oakridge, Oregon, so by the time he got back, the rain had, ruined the ability to cast the track. So my daughter, she works at a bar, and this guy named Ronnie comes walking in there, and he's asking all about Bigfoot. A nice guy. But my daughter says, my dad hears these things up here. You might want to talk to him. And that's how I met Ronnie. I went down, and my daughter introduced me to him, and he wanted to know. So I told him all this stuff. And he says, well, I'd like to go up there with you. And so I took him up there. And first he's wanting to go down by the swamps, and I kept trying to tell him, this all is happening up here, man. But we went down there. And this other old guy that come with him, he's another wonderful guy. He lives in Montana, and he's into research and all that. So they decided we're going to spend the night down there, and we set up a bug screen, and, because it's swampy down there, a lot of mosquitoes. And we're hearing things, and whistles, little whistles. I mean, nothing extravagant, but whistles. And nothing big really happens down there. So we pack up, and we're getting out of there, and we get these little rocks and stuff being thrown at us all the way out of there. And so we get to the top, and I finally talked Ron into going up to this other spot where I camp at. And we get up in there, and it's all an old logging unit. There's an old road that goes down through there, and it's old. So we walk down in there a little ways, and there's a trail coming across, and there's these small Bigfoot tracks, barefooted tracks, you know. You could have said they might even have been a person if they weren't so wide, but they were small. And I said, look at this, man. And he's checking it out, and he decided, he said, you know what, I'm going to town. I'm going to go get some bananas and stuff. And he starts feeding them, and, you know, he's going to make friends with them, and everything's good, and we need to spend the night. And so we do. And my dad, he was like 82 or so at the time, right in there. And he goes with us. And my dad, he went to bed early. You know, he always does, gets up early. And I talk to Ron as long as I can, but I'm disabled and I got to get off my feet. I can't sit for a long time because it hurts. It's like real low in my back, so I can't sit very well. So I go lay down, but I'm still talking to Ronnie. And he's telling me this stuff that happened in the Sierra Nevadas and stuff, and he lets out this horrible sound, man, like what he had heard right behind his tent. And I said, man, that was kind of intimidating. That would have scared me. And we're talking, and pretty soon he says, Dwayne, he says, are those monkey sounds you're talking about? And I said, that's them. And he said something like, oh, no, get ready for the coming attraction. But they just kept coming closer. And this hill we're on is steep on both sides of it. It's a dead-end road. You just can't make it up it very well in the daytime, let alone at nighttime. And there's all this noise coming, and it just keeps getting closer, man, closer and closer. Pretty soon, Ron, he jumps in the tent with us, man. And these things come up into our camp like in a single file group line and completely circled our tent up there. And they were screaming at us for, I'd say, an hour and a half to 2 hours. I mean, screaming. They were making sounds like owls, which goes back to where it started, where I said not the owl. They were sounding like coyotes. And this big one, he sounded like a raven or a crow. He'd make these noises. They had these weird monkey sounds. I don't know what gibberish or talk. I don't know what was going on, but I was in panic mode. I'm telling you, panic mode. I was just bringing this guy up there, you know, and all this just happened at once. Nothing like that's ever happened. My poor dad, he was praying all night. He said, I can't believe this has ever happened to me. And so this big one that sounds like the raven, he's stomping up to the tent, and you could feel it. I mean, you could feel their voice right through your body. And I'd talk louder, and he'd back up, and they'd all make noise, and he'd stomp up closer, and I'd talk louder again. It was incredibly intense. I mean, intense. You just would never think that something like that could ever happen, ever. And there it was. So when I, heard Ronnie telling everything that was going on in my name, and how much everybody was interested in it, I wanted to weigh in on that a little bit. There was moonlight out, and I was conscious enough that, and terrified enough that I wouldn't even raise up enough to see my silhouette on the edge of the tent. I wanted to give no clue where I was at in there at all. So I didn't even look, but by the sound I could tell. And they were on the ground, and they were right next to us. There was a little clearing there where I camped, and all around it was, viney maple and trees, and so there was like a little kind of barrier, and then the road, and then some more trees, and then another open field. And So there was no way except for sound, but they were close enough that you couldn't mistake the sound at all, that you could tell where they were coming. You could hear the individual voices of these different. Ronnie says about 5. I say probably more like 8 at least.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we differ very little on it at all. He was pretty spot on telling from, what I believe. I just believe there was more. I don't know. He's like they're going to be friends or something. And I'm with the other group that says, man, I don't think I ever want to do that again. But, it was horrifying. It was terrifying. My dad, he's got a little problems with his memory, and when he doesn't like talking about it much, but once in a while he'll say something about it, and it was just unbelievable. The whole experience was unbelievable. It was more than other creatures. In fact, when I didn't mention, when me and my dad went up there to camp before this had happened, we went up and set up a camp up there. There was this big guttural roar. I mean, roar. I'm thinking bear maybe, but now I'm pretty sure it wasn't. My dad's like, what is that? And I roared back. I was younger then a little bit. And he's like, what are you doing? I said, I'm letting him know I'm here. And, things a younger man will do. But if I'd only known then what I know now, I probably never would have. And after getting way more experience with bears, I learned what they sound like real well. And it was definitely not a bear, but I didn't know that then. So, I had to move around the mountains. I went to Montana. I had to hunt up there. The Gallatin Valley and the Bridger Mountains. It's beautiful. But you have to contend with animals up there. There's bears, grizzlies. And my brother and I, we went up there, and there's a place up there, Highlight Reservoir, and we were catch 24-inch cutthroats out of that lake. So we're looking around, and we come over this hill, and there's this beautiful blonde grizzly bear with a cub, and she took immediate offense. Now, this bear crossed probably a football field length at least in, I'd say, maybe 3 seconds flat. It was on top of us that fast, and it abruptly stops, kind of like skids like into a baseball diamond or something, and it slaps dirt and chunks of ground all at us, through it, and her ears, folded back, and she's bouncing on her front legs and just woofing up the storm. And that was panic, but it didn't bother me too much. I knew what a bear was, and I could live with that. I knew about bears. We just backed out of there real carefully. I had a shotgun on us. We were definitely not too worried. I never put a strap on it, because if you have to reach for something in those cases, you don't have any time. So, but we backed out of there, and nothing happened, and it never really blocked me into going into the woods. And it was another occasion that a grizzly come on us. My father-in-law was wanting to videotape a moose, and then he flashes over to a bear, and he mentions it. He goes, look at that bear. I said, no. That's a cub. That's a cub. So,
yeah.
We had to get out of there in a hurry, too, and get up on a point. And then I said, look, that's her, and she was coming dead at us. So, I'm used to wildlife. And in fact, the moose scare me more. They'll all the way across the field can look up at you chewing a cut of grass or whatever, and then come at you with a rage you would never believe. It's just amazing. So the moose terrified me a lot more. But this thing up there, man,
I was just going to ask you how you felt with those large predators over in Montana. Did you feel the same with these creatures in Oakridge, or was it even more?
No, it was the other animals were all less. This thing, I can't. I've only slept out in the woods twice since this has happened, and I have a hard time going up there. When Ronnie said I had PSD, he wasn't lying. I try. I want to go, and it just gets to me. It's, I can't run. I can't, I'm hobbling around on a cane, and there's a group of them out there, It's not like one Bigfoot or a happy little family. It's like there's a tribe of them out there, and I never thought that in my mind until that surprising incident. I was dumbfounded, and Ronnie the next day, he's like, he says, "Man, I wonder what caused all that." I said, "You did, man." He made that noise, man. And within 15 minutes, they were on their way, and they were mad. So I don't know what he said to them, and I hope anybody else that just are playing games, and blowing noises out in the woods, that they might end up getting a little bit more than they want someday.
Absolutely. So you're in the tent, and you hear them come up and circle around the tent. What happened the rest of the night then?
Well, they eventually, started fading out in the distance. They were leaving. I don't know how far they were going, but eventually we couldn't hear them anymore. I'm panicking. Nothing like this has ever happened, or the thought of something like that never happened. I was panicking all night, man. I don't know if Ron slept. They didn't say nothing. My dad, he started snoring. I stayed awake all night. I couldn't even get up and go pee until in the morning when somebody got up to watch the other way. I just didn't feel safe. But the whole night, I was awake all night long. I laid there just listening for every sound that I could hear. It was unbelievable. There's no way you could have got away. I felt like they wanted us to get out of the tent and run. That's just how I felt, that they wanted. I don't know. It was a devastating story, and I'd like to get over that, but I still try. In fact, I tried to call Ronnie the other day, but my number isn't working. I'm going to have to go up to his house and want to go up there and look around again. And, the more time I spend up there, maybe the easier it might get, but I don't know. I'm open, still trying.
When you were up there in that area, did you experience anything else out of the ordinary? Any weird sounds that didn't belong, or see anything that was strange?
Over the years, always heard strange sounds. I never seen any orbs. Me and my brother saw what we thought might be a UFO once. We was up there with a friend hunting, and that's about it. But I will say that when I was younger, after all this and hearing things, there was a guy that he was talking about some book. I don't know, he was trying to sell a book or something. I wish I'd have bought it. I can't remember the name of it. It was a long time ago. And it was about that area that we always hunt in. And it was how little things get started in a town. There was another time on the bottom where we were up there. I was with my brother-in-law and another guy. They were trying to get a deer up there and never got one, so I took them up there. and it's steep ground, and you have to work when you get one to get it out. But beautiful country. And I had my wall tent up there, the fire going in, and I was just kicked back, resting away for the next day, and this noise of breaking branches, and it was just being tore up. All kinds of crazy noise. And my brother-in-law and the other guy, Mike, he was panicking. So I said, well, just shoot around off up in the air. And you could hear this thing come in making all this noise, but as soon as they shot, you heard not one sound at all the rest of the night. We got out flashlights and looked. We could find nothing, but we heard it come in right close to the camp. And that's kind of right underneath of where we would camp at the top, and all this stuff would happen up there that I told Ronnie about. But that's probably it was normal. Me and my brother would hike up there at 12 years old. We'd hike up that trail all the time. We'd run up and down the mountain and up and down the river. Nothing weird really happened. I've been up there my whole life.
Wow.
Even before I could drive, my brother and I would hike that trail and go up there. We were always up there. Always.
Main time when something happens, it sounds like it may have been because Ronnie made that sound then. I'm
assuming that that's the only thing I can think of. That was that's how I seen your podcast. I watched these things after that happened. All kinds of things over and over again. I try to make sense of it. I try to get a clue to understand it. It's like other animals that you know their habits. You know what to do and what not to do. How to camp. How to not take toothpaste and underarm deodorant in your tent. Around a grizzly bear. That's not a smart idea. To always change your clothes into sleeping clothes after you cook and eat. All vital important things to know. But this thing, don't even know what it is. How do you prepare? How do you wrap your mind around that? I don't know.
It makes you wonder what might happen if someone was to play sounds like that for an extended period of time in the Oakridge area.
Yeah, it could be interesting. I would say be prepared and try not to hurt them. Try to get away first. I don't think they would deserve that. So I would like to know more about what they are. And, I hear all these different things. Like one thing I'd seen on there where a guy had been, camping on property he got from his dad, building a cabin, and him and his son was camped out on in a tent, and this thing drug him through the woods for, God knows how far. And this, things like that is like, wow. What could have happened? Maybe, I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it still. I'm still trying to figure it out.
I wanted to ask you about the monkey sounds you heard that one night with Ronnie. Have you ever heard any other monkey that sounds similar to it?
No. That's why I say monkey-like. It was, because my kids always hated me. I would like to watch documentaries on, everything, animals and all kinds of things. I like history and, interesting things. And so I've been around a lot of animals. And then the ones I can't be around, like I've been to the wildlife safari to see, and then the rest I watch on, National Geographic or something like that. But I'm always watching things on even the smallest. And one time I was up in the High Lakes. We were up there fishing, me and another friend of mine, and we're just fishing away. But then all of a sudden, this hillgramite crawls out of the water and up a stem, and and starts cracking open. So, we focus on this thing. And we watch this dragonfly crawl up the stem and dry itself off. And then, it flutters its wings a bit and it takes off. And this great big bee zooms down and swoops it up, and it was gone, done that. And we watched it forever. So I'm just interested in even the smallest things, But I've never heard anything like it. It was, he got some tapes out from, I think Ron Moorhead or something like that. Yeah, see, I'm not a guy that was even looked for them or paid attention to any of that, so I'm kind of bad on the names. But, so some of those sounds that I heard on there were kind of similar to that, and then some were a little different too. That's unexplainable. But the mimicking the other animals and, incredible. Incredible.
So I just want to clarify. So you're saying some of the things you heard were similar to the Sierra sounds that Ron Moorhead recorded, sounds like?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely. And then the tracks the next morning when we got up and looked around, man, there was different sized tracks. But that big one that kept coming back to the tent back and forth, it was like 23 inches long. It was so huge that it just looking at the track freaked you out, No way.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually a question I wanted to ask you is, when you woke up the next morning, were there things you noticed that made you think, okay, what happened last night actually did happen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could definitely see where they came in and went around the camp. And, a lot of the spots, it was either solid or pine needles and didn't sink in good. But every once in a while, you'd find a place where, a fern had been kicked out of the way, or there was fresh dirt there, and you would find a little print or two, But that print was unbelievably big, man. Unbelievably big.
Did you see situations where there was like kind of a trackway where you saw print and then maybe a few feet ahead of it you saw another print from the same animal, potentially?
Oh, yeah. That's happened through there, definitely. Like where he was feeding them, where I found that track coming out, he put it in there. And then we go back up there to check it, and I said, hey, look, Ron, there's a track coming out here the other direction. And the bananas would be gone. I mean, just gone. Nothing there. And one time he put this pastry in there.
Right.
Like you could buy in a box, those clear boxes at the bakery at the store,
The cobbler,
it's
yeah.
got he put one of them up there, man, and I was simply amazed. We got up there and things were gone, and this box was empty, and it was sealed again, not broken, stuffed back in the bag. I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I went up there once with him and a bear. He'd left peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and stuff, and a bear had got into it, and you could tell, things were chewed up, and you could tell it was a bear. And the tracks and everything else, and it's like, Ron, you're feeding bears, so you better be careful with that.
You're feeding bears, yeah. Wow.
And but I was just blown away, and his dedication, thinking that he's going to get close to him. It's kind of amazing, but we'll see in the end if he is. I've heard stories of that same thing happening with other people, and maybe he will. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully. There was a time when you guys were out there, and then Ronnie decided to stay there by himself, correct?
Yeah, there was. We went up there to to check the food and stuff they left up there and look around, And my daughter went with us. And so we're getting up there, and I'm with my daughter in her Jeep, and Ron's got his car up there. So I had my daughter turn her Jeep around, because after that happened, like I said, it was a dead-end road. And I don't feel safe anyway. So I had her turn around, facing the other way, and leave the keys in the car, just in case we have to make a quick escape or whatever. But we're walking around up there, and then that same whistling starts, and my daughter starts whistling back. And the thing whistles back, and my daughter whistles back, and she's walking around and getting a little bit closer to this whistling. Well, these things started getting excited, and it started getting hopped up pretty good, and a few sounds went off, and then all of a sudden a squirrel starts just freaking out that's down over the edge a little bit, which tells you that something has disturbed that squirrel and is either walking towards you or walking away from you if you can't see it. But something right there is moving, because, if you ever hunt, those squirrels will tell on you all the time. You're trying to stalk up on an animal, and all of a sudden they start chattering and going off because you walked under the tree or whatever. And well, they do the same thing to everything else. So, this squirrel starts chattering off, and then all of a sudden you hear this other noise, and then the raven noise. I was like, oh no, that's the big one. And so me and my daughter, she wanted to go, and I really didn't want to stay, and I tried to talk Ronnie into going. But he says, I'm going to stay. And I said, okay, man, that's on you, but, if you don't come home, I'll come look for you. I know where you're at. And we left. He said he's going to stay. And then when I seen him the next day, he says they were roaring. They were, he says, man, I almost wanted to run. I almost wish I did. And it was quite the amazing day, but yeah, we go up there every once in a while and see how far I can, go up in there and move around. It's quite a place.
It really sounds like it. And if listeners haven't heard Ronnie's episode, you need to go listen to it, because his part of the story after Dwayne leaves gets very intense. But so it sounds like since that time you haven't actually been up to that same spot again because of the PTSD.
Oh, I've been up there.
Okay.
A few times. In fact, that was my daughter happened after that. And I've been up there with Ronnie only during the day, maybe 3 times or 4 times, and that's why I tried to call him the other day. I want to go up there again and see how I can maneuver and feel.
Have you ever been up there without Ronnie? There's been a situation happened with any of these creatures, you think?
Well, yeah, the time when, before that, when I was up there with my son and
the monkey,
we were camping and I heard the monkey sounds, but they never harassed me or tormented me, and I never thought twice about it, but I never really thought about it. But after, the build up and all the things, and, you start understanding, sometimes you'll get a smell on these things, and sometimes they won't smell. I don't understand that either. But
what does it smell like?
It's kind of like a dirty garbage bear. Like our dump used to be on the ground. Now it's all in big containers that they haul off to the recycle whatever center. But when I was growing up, our dump was just a place they dumped all the bags and, mowed it over with a cat after it got full or whatever. And all these bears would come in there and eating the garbage bears. And it was like them, but maybe a little more musky and rancid, but real strong. Kind of like, I don't know what animals you got there if you're into the outdoors, but, I can smell a moose, I can smell an elk, and I've smelled deer. They're a little harder. Got to probably be closer, and a little bit of rain helps with them. But I've never smelled a cougar. I don't know what it smells like, so I don't know if I've smelled one in the woods or not. But everything's got its own little smell. I always could tell the difference in the smells. Like you can smell when you're walking into a herd of elk. You know it's a herd of elk. The smell is intense, the musk, and the smell of these things is just gnarly. But then sometimes when they're around, you don't smell them. It didn't. I don't know.
That is very interesting. I've heard that from other people too, where sometimes there's a lot overpowering smells, sometimes there's not. But have you ever been to the Spirit Lake area east of Oakridge?
Oh yeah. I've been all over all these lakes. My aunt, she worked for the Forest Service, and in fact, I got old maps I haven't gone through. She died not too long ago, and I kept the maps. But the old maps that she has little lakes and things on them that aren't on the new maps at all. And some of them are like right off the road. You can go in there and catch a fish, and you drive by that lake a million times and never know it was even in there. And it's just right off the road. But I love the woods.
Spirit Lake is a thing that's come up in a few conversations with people I've talked to from the Oakridge area, where they say there's been some pretty interesting Bigfoot encounters that have happened up there. Is that anything? Did you experience anything weird when you went to that area, or?
I wouldn't say weird. Maybe once in a while, something you couldn't, and a sound you couldn't explain, or a knocking, and you could write it off as somebody else, but there ain't nobody else around. But nothing real big. It was pretty. Most of my life it was it could be, it couldn't be. I don't know. I wasn't into it, but some sounds that are just repetitive, and you hear everything else, and you got to kind of analyze what it could be, and it could be something else, but highly doubtful. When you're packed into the lakes, it's very seldom have I ever seen anybody when I was back in there. I seen a wolverine in there up in Eddie Leo's basin one time. It's the only time I ever seen one in life, except for on TV. And it was a beautiful, and a fisher too. Not many people have even seen a little fisher, but they're a vicious little critter themselves, fishing on the bank. Man, it was a chipmunk over there chirping, and I'm trying to catch a brown or a brookie. And next thing you know, this little fisher comes swooping in there and grabs that chipmunk, and it's just wailing and screaming, and it goes running off. And
oh my goodness. That's wild, Dwayne.
Little creatures. Nobody around except for those little animals.
Wow.
And so you hear noises. And
I really appreciate your time talking today. There's just one more question I got for you. Thinking back over the years, you living in that area, have you ever heard of a time where there's been an individual that's actually had a face-to-face sighting where they have actually had eyes on the creature itself, and they're like, yeah, I saw one.
Oh yeah. I got a couple people I know that they've got casts, they've got all kinds of things and documentation, and they've kept it forever. You know, it's a guy and his dad. I knew the younger guy. Well, I knew his dad too. He, you know, does a lot around Oakridge, but my dad and a guy named Ron Maycock one time said that after this encounter, my dad had said that they were going up above Oakridge, you know, up past the lake area up there, and one, it was like a gray one, had ran across the road and freaked Ron out, and they never spoke of it ever. Then that one that I had seen that had hopped up on that ledge and ran off on two legs we wouldn't chase. Now, I don't know what it was, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't a bear that he was following, because I could see it clear as day. One-handed up to the top of that we had to work to get up and help each other to get up. I wasn't going after that bear. As I said, I don't think that was a bear. I'm going back. But there's other people. I think when you get here, you might be amazed. There's quite a few people probably that have had encounters that it's just all over the place, I think.
I'm going to be ready to talk to some people for sure, Dwayne. I will be ready. Man, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you this afternoon, Dwayne. I never thought I'd be able to actually talk to the other guy in the story, but just thank you for reaching out to me. This has been a real fun time, and I hope to maybe run into you when I'm out in Oakridge in just a few weeks.
Yep, you got my number, man. Just give me a call.
Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's the list. All right, I'm going to use this space this week to announce that I'll be at the Sasquatch Summerfest in Oakridge, Oregon as an attender. I won't be presenting or anything, but I'll be hanging out trying to interview people that have had Bigfoot encounters. If you're from the Oakridge, Oregon area or surrounding and you've had a Bigfoot experience, please contact me directly, bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Also, Priscilla was nice enough that if you get your tickets through SasquatchSummerfest.com and use code BigfootSociety, you can get 50% off the cost of your tickets, which is a big amount. So code BigfootSociety to get 50% off your tickets, SasquatchSummerfest.com, and helps out the podcast as well. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. If you want to join in the fun, you can join over at patreon.com/The Bigfoot Society. I'll see you there. And again, thanks for listening.
and I can get on here and we can tell our stories. Maybe there's somebody else out there listening that's too afraid to tell their story. Maybe this will give them the courage to come out and not feel so bad about it. Who cares what anybody thinks? I know what I saw. I know what's out there. That's all I care about.
Please let people know. Please let them know. If you ever see one of these things, you need to tell. Because if you don't, then shame on you. You know? Shame on you.